Ukraine's President Zelensky has held talks with the Prime Minister of neighbouring Poland, Donald Tusk. The meeting comes after critical infrastructure in western Ukraine was hit in what local officials described as a massive Russian attack. President Zelensky saying some of the attacks were concentrated in the city of Lviv, close to the border with Poland. No reports of any casualties so far, but Ukraine has imposed emergency power cuts in 6 regions in response and says Russia targeted gas infrastructure and other energy facilities. We've just seen a joint news conference with Mr. Tusk. President Zelensky saying that he was looking ahead to Donald Trump's return to the White House and the influence that could have on the war between Russia and Ukraine. Let's have a listen.
In 5 days, in the US, a new president will be sworn, and we are waiting for looking ahead to this cooperation according to the concept peace through force, through strength. Sanctions are important in this context. This semester will be also important for us in our cooperation conducive to the EU membership for Ukraine. We should be very, very effective in opening negotiation chapters. We should be able to open a few of them during this semester. Diplomacy, security, economy are at stake. The faster Ukraine will become a member of NATO and EU, the faster we will achieve this necessary stability and sustainability on the political level.
They very much seemed aligned, President Zelensky and Donald Tusk, when we were watching that news conference. And the Prime Minister said that all of Europe was committed to spending more on defence.
Without any doubt, if European countries and NATO countries stand up to the challenge, we have all the assets on our hand that and will ensure that America will still perceive us as a reliable ally. Nobody will fix the issue of our security for us. We should be here. We should be like-minded with President Trump. Many years ago, I had many talks with the President Trump, and everything pointed to that fact, and America will cooperate for many years with us.
Let's take you to our correspondent Sarah Rainsford, who joins us now from Kyiv. Sarah in Kyiv at the moment, but often to be found in Warsaw. So Sarah, just listening in to that press conference as well, the two leaders did seem very aligned. There was that reiteration about speeding up Ukraine's accession to the EU and to NATO as well. And President Zelensky really calling again for people to step up their support for their air defences. What else did you glean from that press conference that you thought was interesting?
I think it was interesting that both countries, both presidents were keen, or both leaders rather, were keen to underline ongoing cooperation with the US, and this idea that when Donald Trump takes over, they hope for a smooth transition essentially, and for US support to continue here in Ukraine, suggesting perhaps Donald Tusk that he has a long experience with Donald Trump and that perhaps a common language could be found, and really stressing the idea that Ukraine's peace in Ukraine and defending Ukraine is a common cause for its Western allies, not just about safety and security here in Ukraine itself, but about the broader cause of democracy, the EU and the US. I thought it was interesting that President Zelensky underlined that US support was absolutely critical to the defense of Ukraine, and he again talked about the need for a just and a lasting peace. He talks about peace through force, peace through strength, so this idea that Ukraine needs to be reinforced as much as possible so that if and when there are to be negotiations with Russia, that Ukraine can come to that from a position strength. I also thought, watching it from a sort of Polish perspective, it was interesting that Donald Tusk was very keen to talk about the need for EU members, EU countries who are members of NATO, to really step up in their defence spending, which of course is something that Donald Trump has criticised many, many times, talking about countries who just are not paying their way as members of NATO. Poland really does lead the way on that. Its defence spending is enormous as a percentage of GDP, and what Donald Tusk was arguing, the Polish leader was arguing, is that other countries need to try to get much to get much closer to Poland, if you like, as an example, because if the EU and NATO are spending heavily on defence, then they will be far stronger even than they are now against Russia, far more capable of resisting Russian aggression.
And Sarah, in terms of what's happening in Ukraine itself, has it become any clearer throughout the day just how much damage has been done to the energy infrastructure after these attacks by Russia in the night?
No, we're not getting much more information. Certainly talk of a gas facility as well as other energy infrastructure being targeted by Russia. We know that some 10 of those missiles that were fired by Russia overnight appear to have hit their targets, but we're not getting a huge amount of information on exactly what's been affected. There have been some rolling blackouts in some regions of the country. Often that's preventative, it's to kind of take some of the strain off the system in anticipation of these kinds of attacks. And of course, those blackouts are something that Ukrainians have become really used to as this war has dragged on now, heading towards the 3-year mark. We're in the middle of winter, and again, Russia is targeting the energy infrastructure in this country.